On this episode, I'm going to show you my setup and my step-by-step process where I use AI to generate quotes faster.
How old are you going to be before you start to experience life like you want it? I want to tell you right now, whether you like it or not, there is a better way to do business.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Business for Builders podcast. My name is Max. I am the CEO and president of Smith & Sons Canada, and I'm the ambitious founder of EliteBusinessAdvisory.com, where I do customized coaching for general contractors and builders. Thanks for stopping by. If you've been with me for the longest time, I appreciate it. You know I do. And if you've just chimed in to check us out, I appreciate you having a crack, and hopefully you'll walk away with some value and something that will help you maybe make some improvements within your business. Don't forget, like and subscribe. One of these drops every week, and get across to Business for Builders VIP on Facebook. There's a good group of builders and general contractors starting to build there. And I might have made mention my experience at the home show on the last episode. There was a gentleman there that we connected. He's about 15 minutes out of town here. And, we both agreed that getting together, we do slightly different work in the construction business. But, there was some advantage by just, hey, let's just get together and chat about recruitment and business development and things like that. So, get across to Business for Builders VIP. Answer the questions, please. It's just the way that I keep that group very much to do with general contractors and builders, and I'll let you in. Righto, let's get after it. I am going to chat with you about what I do as a general contractor or as a builder to generate quotes faster using artificial intelligence. Now, I think this is really, two things have happened. One is that what we need to, if you're a fixed price builder, if you're a cost plus builder, this may not be as applicable. But if you're a fixed price builder, what we're trying to do is get quotes, requests for quotations from the different sub-trades. Suppliers are normally okay, but sub-trades can be a challenge. And so not only, even if suppliers take, a couple of days or a week to get back to us with a quote, we're still like, if you're like us where you've got 10 or 15 leads coming in a month, then you're kind of in that position where you're sort of a little bit, I can't get the quotes out fast enough, Max. That's usually, I either hear I don't have enough leads, or I just can't get quotes out fast enough because I'm being hijacked by sub-trades. And so for me, understanding completely, what it is that they're talking about, and then the introduction of AI, to me, it's a little bit of a godsend for us builders. So I really just want to kick off with some basics. This is not rocket science. The biggest challenge is, how do I use AI to speed up my estimation process and not compromise accuracy? And that was my concern. It's like, what could this piece of software, know about the construction industry? And having used it now for quite some time, but probably the last 6 or 7 months, I've really doubled down on going, right, this is going to be my estimator co-pilot. So instead of me talking to my business partner, which I am privileged to have, and we can talk about, hey, how long do you think this would take? That's a valuable asset in itself. But not only that, I can also use AI to generate scenarios so that we can then chat about that at a higher level. Okay, so I think when it comes down to it, we have to be organized. If we have a job come in that, let's say it's a main floor, full gut renovation, okay? What we've got to make sure that we're doing with whichever piece of software that you're going to use. Now, the one that I use the most is ChatGPT. I've started to use Perplexity, although I'm not paying for that as yet, but I do use it to cross-check and cross-reference a little bit, okay? It's inevitable. I will probably spend $20 or $30 or whatever it is to have Perplexity as a paid version. But I will, I will definitely use mostly, I will spend a lot more time using ChatGPT. So how do you go about using it? I think I might have alluded to this a couple episodes ago, where I've had clients that I've talked to about this, and I've showed them what I do, and they're like, whoa, I've never put that much information in to ChatGPT, okay? So there maybe is the first realization for you. You really need to give the artificial intelligence program context, okay? So, there's things like, I've even been known to add building contracts in their entirety, cut and paste into ChatGPT. So I might have asked ChatGPT, when I've cut and pasted my 13-page contract, I might have actually entered, cut and paste all of that data in there and said, according to, some legal things, or any changes in the law, is this contract still valid? And, just to get a bit of a starting point. Now, I can ring up my lawyer team and find out because they drew it up for me originally. But what I'm asking GPT to do in that case is to give me a red flag as to where there's some weak spots within my contract potentially. Okay, so so let's just roll a scenario now so that you can get a real good understanding of maybe what, my initial reaction is. And I would just do this. I would just share my story. So I am not a professor. This is not a masterclass. This is not me. I'm just saying to you guys, hey, this is what I find works really well for us. Okay. And I probably shared stories where I have produced quotes. I get a phone call at 10 o'clock in the morning, have a couple of conversations on the phone, and then I put out a quote, at 4:30 or 5 o'clock that afternoon, and the client is just absolutely stoked. So my immediate go-to is when I get an inquiry that comes in via the internet, ends up in my JobTread, I send them a welcome email. And then I request that they respond to me with just a got it, hey, yep, understood, because I ask them in that email, I said, you can upload photos and, plans and PDFs and things like that, but I just want you to come back to me, hit me with a got it. And that way I know that we are now communicating. So that's the first thing, because remember, if you've got 10 or 15 coming in and you've got to get 100 leads maybe to get to one job, you've got to have a very good qualification process. So, I think initially I would not run directly to a quote number, fixed price, like I did for the gentleman a couple of weeks ago. I said, mate, that deck renovation is going to cost you between 29 and 34 or something like that. And that got, because what we sometimes have to do, folks, is we've got to raise people's expectations, because a lot of their expectations are supremely outdated. I mean, COVID was a game changer as far as, price increases and things like that and costs. So we've now got to reboot and re-educate the marketplace. And like I explained on the last episode where I was holding up a menu pricing board, a guideline of pricing for different scopes of projects, we've got to do that to be able to sort of get the marketplace caught up, because otherwise what you'll find is they'll need to go and, get 3 or 4 no's with their, I want to renovate the bathroom for 10 grand before they actually, sort of realize that, actually this bathroom is going to cost me more like 25 grand or whatever. Okay. So I think just getting down to the nuts and bolts, right? So it's all about giving the right amount of context. So, what I would do initially is to start with, developing, or now if you're inside of AI, and particularly GPT, because it's my go-to, and you're not breaking up every entry that you add in there under a conversation, your ability to find those entries is going to be impossible. Like, there is a search bar and you could probably track it down. What I like to do is to keep my shit a bit organized. So if you're Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner and you make an inquiry, whether it's on the phone, whether it's on digital, whether it's come through a contact form on our website, and I send out that welcome email, you hit me back, I will immediately go, right, at this point, I've got a player. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put into GPT, I'm going to say, new conversation, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, main floor renovation, right? And then you might tell GPT a bit of a story, and this is where, side note, we go to a prompt sheet, I've got 5 pages of prompts in my hand, which is what I use to fall back on when I get a certain type of project. So I've got general prompts just to get things started, or I've got an introduction to a project, to AI, and then I start getting more specific as we go, and we're going to get into that. Okay, and so really what happens is I've got to give GPT, I've got to segregate or separate the different inquiries that I get from homeowners, and then I've got to start with giving AI some context around this client, and maybe there's some nuances for that project that I need to add in there, because that's important. That will affect the pricing. Okay, so it's important that in some cases you want to make sure that, hey, I'm in Vernon, British Columbia. So all the pricing will be related to that. If the client has said to me that they are very much an essentials, so that's an entry level, maybe not a signature, whether that's sort of more middle of the road or whether you go to premium luxury, I need to understand that, which is one of the questions I ask homeowners. That needs to go in to give context so that so that when we hit go or submit, that it's got the right information to be able to give me more accurate detail. Some cases I might make reference, if it's a pretty simple bathroom, I will instruct AI to use Home Depot pricing because it's all online and come up with middle of the road pricing inclusions. Okay, now. So what I'm trying to do, we're talking about speed, okay? So it's like, what is it that I'm doing step by step to get to the back end to be able to put it into my budget in JobTread to be able to then create either a fixed price quote or come up with a price range that I can rely on. Okay, so like I said, this is a 5-page document. Now, you might, some of you guys might go, Max, if you give me your prompt sheet, my life will change. It may, okay, but I would encourage you because it's in doing the, where you roll your sleeves up and you work hard at educating yourself instead of me just giving it to you, which there's nothing special about this. This is just 6 months of work that I've slowly thought, you know what, I'm typing the same shit into a GPT every time. Why don't I get a prompt sheet? Well, you could do the same. It would be actually quicker and more custom for you to actually begin to build your own prompt sheet. So you go into Google Forms or Google Documents, I should say, and you basically go, right, you label it. Now, this is where builders, you got to be organized. So you've got to build your file framework in such a way that you know where you put stuff, because we've all done it. It's like I created that, and of course the search program or the search processes in Google are really good. So if you can kind of remember roughly what you call the document, generally more often than not, you'll find it. The other thing I do to expedite, so this prompt sheet, especially because I was going to the home show a couple of weekends ago, I then added that, I bookmarked that under a file on my browser. So I would click on Home Show and then it would go to my speedy quote system with my prompts for AI, because I was going to rely on AI to be able to allow me to get people numbers back fairly quickly, okay? So you want to start the new conversation in AI. You want to have the prompt document in Google Forms and then attach that link to a bookmark inside on your browser. And that way you are going to have quick access to what you need to put into AI to be able to sort of build these quotes. Now, so what makes up this 5 pages, okay? On the front, I've got general estimation prompts. Remember, this is just me. This is all about pioneering how we embrace technology and then how we adopt it and then make it work for us. And I might have mentioned that I'm working with clients, husband and wife team, where, this is such an advantage for the wife because she understands a lot of the scope, but of course doesn't understand the micro of construction. But when you're estimating, that's where we're hoping that AI is actually going to fill the gap. And then the review process for the builder, if it's a guy, the husband comes in, looks over the quote and says, you know what, this is pretty good, or hey, we need to tweak this, this, and this. What I've just done is cut his estimating time by 50%. Because it makes the review process. And so there's a system that the builder who's out on the job site, either doing the work or overseeing or supervising, can use this system to be able to leverage and allow someone else to do something which is technically above their education grade because of the technology, okay? Right, so general estimation prompt. So it's what we've got further on here is what I would call a specific project scope prompts. But even that, what I really use is, and I'll read you this, okay? Create a detailed bill of quantities, labor breakdown, in brackets, minimum hourly rate is to be $75 an hour, and material delivery, handling, and logistic costs in Word format. I want a Word document. In addition to the raw costs of goods sold, i.e. materials, labor, delivery, permits, include a 5% contingency, obviously for the materials and labour and everything else, a 2.5% contingency for sales commission, a 1.75 contingency for payment methods, and calculate the project duration in days. Add a line item management fee of $500 per day. That's applicable to our business. You need to figure out what your day rate is and how many projects you run at the same time. To the budget as well, and add a 12% markup to the final total price plus 5% GST because we're in British Columbia. And that's what I would regard as, that gets me started. I would say that's step one. Let's call that step one, okay? Now, the 12% markup is so I can achieve a 10% net. To me, 10% net profit at the end of the year is a baseline. Now, if you don't have a brand like I've got, and if you don't have market brand awareness and market penetration like I do in this town, then you might have to start out with a 6 or 7% markup on all of that information to achieve a net profit that's a lot less than 10%. Now, I know for a fact that most guys and gals are running businesses right now that make very little, if any, net profit. So you might, you hear me sort of talk about, and I probably talked about this in a couple of episodes before, about putting that 12% markup on. I might have, that might be a little challenging for you to be out. Once you've done the numbers, you might look at that and go, I don't know if I can do that. So you might have to move that markup percentage down to maybe 7%. Okay, and so that would be step one. So if we talk about, those different things, and I mean, I'm standing in front of a whiteboard here, and I guess those, let's do this, just so the viewers can understand step one. So what we've got is a bill of quantities. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is it's materials. The third thing is going to be delivery. The fourth thing is going to be your contingencies, which I think 5% is probably not a bad place to start. And then, of course, you've got, what I call it, charging, payment methods. Now, you don't have to do all this, right? You don't have to put all of these in, but this is how my brain thinks, okay? So you might go, you know what, that's a good idea, but I might do that a little bit later, okay? So payment method, okay? Because in this day and age, when you can get a square, so you can get a tap or whatever it is, and you can take credit cards over the phone, you might not be able to, pick and choose who uses what payment method. So you might say, well, no, Max, actually, I'm going to just put in 1%, and, hopefully over a year, we'll accrue enough in that pot to be able to pay out, the likes of Square or whoever you're using to do your processing in that regard. Obviously, line items. So what we're going to have here is project management, right? And basically operating expenses. Okay, so that's basically what it costs my business to run per day. And then, of course, then we've got the final thing is what markup percentage are you going to run? And I run 12% on top of all of these costs. That's what my methodology is, because things at the moment I wouldn't say they're not too lively, they're not bubbly, right? It's not good enough for me to be able to just go and throw a 43% markup to make 30% margin and then go, right, we should be okay. Furthermore, if you can't build up, this is a great way, to put this kind of markup on all of these expenses, including your project management. If you were going to go on in 6 months, you're going to go and put on in 6 months, I want to put on a supervisor. What you can be doing is having a day rate, right, that is equal to when you put this guy or girl on, which I think is prudent because that's called business development. It's called strategic planning. Interesting concept, okay? So this is why I don't think I'll ever go back, and this is me saying it, I don't think I'll ever go back to just a straight markup at, say, 43 to 45% for renos, and then a markup, say, of 33% for new homes. I just don't think I'll do that because I'm wanting to grow a business. So to grow a business, I've got to make sure I've got coin. I've got to have expansion capital. So not just operating capital here, but actually expansion capital. So how do I do that? Well, if I was to increase my day rate so that when I start closing deals, it's right before I'm ready to hire that new person to come on. So what you've got is you've got that merge between old jobs that we've just signed with new humans coming in and working with us, okay? I think that's about it. And then obviously, now, like I said, you might not do this markup here of 12%. You might say, you know what? I've covered everything here, cost of goods sold, all my running expenses, all the different contingencies, the sales commissions, etc. That's an interesting one. Sales commission, which I don't think I put in there. You know, that's something that you go, I want to scale my business. I want someone else to do sales. Well, you're going to give them a base rate, you know, a retainer or a wage, and then you want to incentivize using commission. Okay, so there you go. So you increase your operating expenses to cover your salesperson's base rate, and then you might have that, you know, 2.5% sales commission. That would be the alternative. That's another way to think about it. So what I'm doing today is, I'm not saying to you this is how you should do it. What I'm saying to you is, look at the way that I think, and you can kick it down the road and go, forget about it. I'm not doing that. I just like doing it. I like doing this. This is what I like to do. You know, and I think I might have made mention a couple of episodes too. When we talk about it, a 10% net essentially is what we make out of a project. That's our money. That's net profit. That's EBITDA, earnings before income tax and amortization. Like, that is our money that when we pay tax, whatever's left, right, that is ours. Okay. And so that's sort of, you know, that's why the data's got to go into AI, so that it accounts for how I want the jobs to be priced. Right, that's step one, okay? So step number two, we're gonna talk a little bit about because it's not just about numbers. We've actually got to talk to clients in the language at, say, grade 7 or 8 level, so that they can understand and what's going on in the project, what I've allowed for, but also that it builds such a really good presentation that when you get to the price at the back end, they've read the whole proposal and they go, okay, I can see why the price is what it is. And I think that's really important to make sure that if homeowners can see the value first and they can then see the price second, it helps them evaluate as to whether or not they want to actually invest in that project. Because if you've done your job, people go, I understand what I'm getting, to the level that's going to change the way that we have Christmas at our place. It's going to change the way that I can entertain on those special moments during the year, because my house has actually been designed. I'm just not put up with how I bought it. And that's the key. Right. So step number 2, write a section description, okay? So this black's running out too, Dom, I think. So step number 2, descriptions. Now that's going to have to do with, you know, things like site establishment. Now these are explanations for the homeowner. Okay, so this is after we kind of got pretty happy with the quote, as in the body of the costing. Okay, so now we've got all of that builder's legalese taken care of. What we're now trying to do is break down the project into steps or stages, so the client goes, oh, now I understand what Max has got to do when he does that. So there's site establishment or site prep. Okay, in renos, most of the time there's going to be demo, there's going to be framing, there's going to be rough-ins, there's going to be drywall, there's going to be, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So there's going to be probably tile, carpentry, et cetera, okay? So that, I've got to explain to the client what's involved in the rough-ins. Are we doing plumbing, electrical, and HVAC? Are we're doing everything? Or are we just doing one or the other? Like, what are we doing? Well, that's, for me, what I do is, so this is what's on my prompt sheet. Write a section description for, and then I might list site establishment, demolition, framing, rough-ins, drywall, tiling, everything to do with constructions. I'm prompting it as a part 1 of step 2. I'm saying write a section description for that, okay? Now, part of step 2 also is then what I'm going to do is when I put together a quote in my system, there is what I would call a project summary, okay? So this is what I do. Now, remember, the reason I go into an individual conversation is simply because I want AI to start to understand all of the experience or all of the contents or everything a part of this homeowner's journey through my quoting process. So what I'm doing is that AI is learning it as I'm putting it in step by step. So it's very organized in its approach. So a project summary is going to be part of the proposal. Okay? It's part of the proposal. But it's the summary, it's the overview, it's the executive summary, essentially, okay? So I'll say, so after I've written all the descriptions for these parts that are really about the project itself, then I'm going to start talking to the summary part of the quote that leads into all this, okay? And that's where I just say, write a brief project summary for the cover sheet of the quote. So this essentially is the executive summary or the cover sheet, however you'd like to put it. The third part of step 2, eventually, is what I call is the email message. Because, in JobTread, it's made up of all of the quote jargon. I then get to put in this, right, so this is the quote jargon. Then I get into put in the project summary. And then, of course, there's the email message, okay? So once upon a time, it was always about templating. And of course, templating has its place. The challenge with templating, especially when it comes to, doing all of these quote particulars, a lot of the templates, they don't actually reflect what's in that project. As you build this in AI, everything that we talk about, everything that we ask AI to do, like summaries, like an email message, like the descriptions, is all relevant to their project. So it not only saves us time in the build of the quote or the proposal, but it also has remarkable customization built into it because of what we're asking it to do. Right, so now, obviously, I'm not trying to give you you need to educate yourself. You need to try and fail. That sounds weird. Try, accept failure, and just get better. Because I think this is the kind of thing that nobody's done this video that I've looked at. That's that. Like, I've not watched videos on how people do this. This could be one of the first, specifically as it relates to putting a proposal together. So I'm going to encourage you to, rather than be spoon-fed, to take some overarching direction and my explanation of what I use, let's say in my day job, and then you go and customize it to suit your brain, your experience, your marketplace, your business, so that you know facts when you're executing. You can always get better. Like every time we go to a home show, I talked about home shows last week. I think from the September 2024 home show to the March 2025 home show, there was a big jump in what we did. We worked on the quote at the show. We improved the signage for the jelly bean competition. We had the pricing menu boards for all the pricing guidelines. And there's things that we'll go back to, like the layout for the home show in September of 2025 now is going to be vastly different to what we just experienced back then. So what I'm asking you to do is to adopt the same view of how it is that you go and refine AI when you're doing estimates. Okay, so what this last one here is step number 3. Okay, and this is really just made up of things that weren't part of the, let's call it the meat and potatoes in the quote, but I regard them as important. And they're things like, and this may be noted over here because it is definitely a task. The first one might be, what do we got here? We got builders cleanup. Now, I don't need to tell clients about this. However, that's a peace of mind thing. It's like, well, Max, what are you going to do when you get to the end of the job? So that's more of a kind of a sleep at night factor for the homeowner. I'm going to express to them. Now, what that also does is that sort of sets the rules for my team, okay? Because I might use this data in a work order or something like that. And I say, look, this is what I've promised the clients. This is now in your work order. This is in the communication between the office and you as, the on-site operator. This is what I need done. Here's a checklist. I might build a checklist out of the notations so that my team understands the expectation of the client, okay? A couple more things here. Right, completion stages I'll leave out. This is an important one. Exclusions. Now, this is another good one, project duration. Now, would I rely completely on AI to work out the exact number of days? No, I would not. I would go into my own JobTread Gantt chart. I better not go too far to the right here, okay? And that would help me with all of the tasks. That would help me work out the number of days, okay? Right, so again, what I'm using AI to do is cross-check. Remember, it's a co-pilot. I'm the captain. Okay, it's got to be done at the end of the day the way I want it. If I look at some of the data in my 35 years of being involved in this building industry, if it doesn't sit right with that, I've got to go and dive into that and go, what's up? Why do I not feel happy about that? Or I think I might get a number of days from GPT and I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to add a contingency on the days. I don't need to go and sit at that. I'm more comfortable at 3 months, not 2 months, or whatever the case may be. Okay, what else okay, so this is a big one. Workmanship guarantees, there's an N in there, and product warranties. Okay, now, how we would write a very standard like workmanship guarantee and product warranties, but when AI has just been listening to us for the last hour, bang on about this person's main floor renovation, it's going to easily include in here something that's very customized to that client's project that makes a lot of sense and resonates specifically with the homeowner. And that's important, okay? That one there is another sleep at night factor for the homeowner. Right. Now, availability and commencement date. Now, in some cases, if I've got the okay from clients and they're saying, look, like I've got one client that says, I want to start September 1. So when I go back into my Gantt chart and I'm ready to present the proposal, I can say, okay, when I'm adding the information into GPT, I can actually use a start date of September 1, 2025. Okay, so that's me knowing, shit in, shit out. The more detail in, the more specific, the higher quality of verbiage that you get and which is going to make you look much more competent. Okay, now, what I would say is please don't. Okay, so here's the other thing too. When in my office, I've got 2 screens, and if you look on the last episode, there's probably pictures of how I set up the quote at the home show where I had my estimating suite sitting there, 2 screens plus my laptop. So what I've got, what I do on the right screen over here, have I got my 2 screens? I don't know, is that not too high, Dom?
It should be good.
Okay, so what I've got over here is I've got GPT over here and I've got JobTread over here, and then of course my laptop being a little bit smaller, that might have something else there. Maybe there's a product. Sometimes I use GPT and maybe Home Depot, like, on a separate, in another tab. And I just backwards and forwards on pricing, just double checking and things like that. So look, I love this because we can slowly build up to it. But I understand too, guys and gals, that, you're maybe not like me where I spend the majority of my life in an office and I've got a business partner that spends the majority of his life on site. And so I understand that this might be just sort of getting too hard for you, but if you're lucky enough or you're fortunate enough to either have a business partner or a spouse or spice that can really help you in this regard by using these kind of prompts and this understanding on how you navigate from that initial inquiry, what you do to set up, and then what the step-by-step approach is, and then what is the audit program at the back end for you and your building company. This is where I would like to get feedback from you guys as to how well you are using to be able to sort of lean on technology and lean on systems. You know how I feel about systems. Businesses exist off the back of really good systems, and then you have good people running those systems. So, if you've got a good business partner or spouse or spouse, this is something that you might be able to collaborate and work on together to be able to sort of start producing, a very reliable way for your salesperson, or if that's your partner, to be able to sort of produce those quotes at a reliable level. Look, I think that's about it. Obviously, when I get down to it, I probably produced the majority. I would say that page 1 would have been a lot about my input. When I'm talking about estimation prompts, when I've got those steps, what I want included, the bill of quantities, etc., the descriptions, and then of course, these ones, the step 3 descriptions. But then after that, I probably went to GPT and I said, hey, create prompts for pre-construction and design. Create prompts for residential building prompts like full gut reno, kitchen, living, lounge renovation, kitchen only renovation, ensuite. So these were the options. Now, I don't use these. It's my prompt sheet that I created, but I don't refer to that as much. I tend to work fairly organically with the new lead that's come in. And then for those 3 steps that I just outlined, that's where I lean on hard to get me to at least a price range or an estimated price range. And then off the back of that, of course, I would then move into a pre-construction agreement, selection sheets to finalise the final fixed price. Look, if you've got any questions, email me, max@elitebusinessadvisory.com. If you've got any questions about this episode or anything else, you can do that there. If you want to chat with me about, what's included or what do we do with the whole business coaching thing, this is where I live. This is all I do is construction. Hit the book a consultation. I'll give you 30 minutes, complimentary. Let's sit down and talk very specifically about you and your business and some of the things you're doing well and maybe some of the things that you're just not quite nailing. I'll give you easily 30 minutes of my time and just see if I can help you out in that regard. And don't forget, Business for Builders, VIP, get across there, community. Got to talk to each other, guys. If you're in there, ask questions. Guys, if you've got some insight, put your 2 cents worth in. We're not relying on you to be the be-all, the end-all, but I'm telling you, we've got to build that camaraderie that's in this because we've got to move the needle in a positive direction because 50% of builders 5 years from now are going to be broke. That is the facts, okay? Like and subscribe, drop a few comments. If there's anything else, hit me on email, and I'll catch up with you on the next episode. Go build a kick-ass business. Yeah.